Hi there, this is a quick demonstration on how to use the DK oscillator preset. You can download the preset from my website, which if you're watching the video on the website, it should be right next to it. Anyway, so let's say you have this lollipop and someone asks you to make it dance back and forth in like a row in front of some video or something. So you could keyframe that and make a loop or whatever, and that would work. But sometimes that's hard to modify if you want to change anything on it. So instead, you can use this preset. So just unzip the file and install these two presets, the DK oscillator and the DK oscillator 3D, into your presets folder. The 3D one is for 3D layers. It adds some additional control. But since we're not doing a 3D layer, we won't clutter up the screen with that. We'll just use the DK oscillator. Take the oscillator, move it onto your layer, and you get all these controls. So we'll collapse those down, and you'll notice that I move the anchor point of this lollipop to the rotation point I want, which is down here at the bottom. So right now it does nothing. That's because you have to tell it to do something first. So for example, we want it to rotate back and forth. So we'll go to the rotation magnitude, and we just have a slider control here, and that corresponds to the degrees, negative and positive, that it's going to rotate back and forth. So if we put 10 in there, you can see, if we bring up the rotation, it rotates back and forth between plus 10 degrees and minus 10 degrees. And it goes really slow. So we want it to go faster, so we can take the rotation frequency and crank that up to like 5. Then we get a nice little rocking back and forth, which is basically what we wanted, and probably would have taken the same amount of time in keyframes, but is a lot easier to adjust if we want to change anything. So another cool thing you could do is sort of stack these on top of each other. So we got the rotation. We can also add in scale Y right here, which will sort of make it grow up and down as it goes back and forth. So we'll take that and let's say set the magnitude to like 5. And it looks kind of weird and not very good. It's because the frequencies don't match up. So we look at the rotation frequency, it's at 5. So we kind of want this to bounce up and down in sync with the rotation. So let's take the Y frequency and make it twice as much as the rotation frequency. So put that at 10. Now you get kind of a weird bouncy thing that looks a lot like dancing. So another thing you can adjust with this to make it look a little better is the phase. Basically that controls at what point the oscillating movement starts in the cycle. So if we change that to like 5, you can see rather than getting large in the middle and dipping at the edges, it's getting large at the edges and dipping in the middle. And that looks pretty cool. So that's a nice fast way to make an animation like that with this preset. So now that you got an idea of what it can do, I'll sort of show you how it works. Basically, when you drag the preset onto a layer, it puts these expressions in on the position, the scale, the rotation, and the opacity. And they're based on a sine wave, which is what creates the oscillation. And I've added these slider values in the position in the sine wave formula so that you can change the magnitude, the frequency, and the phase just with the sliders. Some other cool things you can do if you wanted to. You could, let's say, get rid of this and maybe make a circle. And you'll want to make sure that the anchor point of your layer is in the middle, because you want it to sort of move around that, and it it works based on the anchor point of the layer, not the anchor point of the shape. So we'll drag this onto there, and we got our controls up here. And what we can do is sort of, let's just set the scale X magnitude to 5 and the scale Y magnitude to 5. And that just kind of makes this thing throb like this, which you might use for something like a speaker or something, I don't know. You can change the frequency up for both of these. Scale Y frequency, and that'll just make it throb faster. That doesn't really look like a speaker, it's not fast enough, but you can make it faster if you wanted. And then again, you can offset the phase by like 3 or something, and instead of throbbing, it'll sort of like undulate, which is kind of cool. So there's a lot of interesting effects you can make with that. Another cool thing you can do, and another advantage this has over keyframes, is that you can actually keyframe these slider values themselves. So let's say you add a position Y, and you set it to 25. And that sort of just makes this go up and down. Actually, let's set that a little higher so we can see what's going on. Set it to 50. So that kind of goes up and down like that. And what you can do is set a keyframe for that, and like set a keyframe for the frequency, and just move ahead a little bit. Goes through a few cycles. And let's change that to 0. Change the frequency up to 10. So then you get kind of this thing where it starts out big and slow, and then sort of shrinks in magnitude and bounces up and down a lot faster until it kind of settles to a stop. And that might be what you want to do, I don't know. It's kind of cool, and that was really fast. That would be something that would take a long time with keyframes to do. Another example of something you could possibly do if you wanted is, let's say we have let's just make a shape here that sort of looks like a leaf. And we'll change the anchor point of the layer to be like above the leaf. So that's the point about which it's going to rotate. And then we'll put the oscillator on it, clap these down, and we can change the rotation magnitude to like 5 degrees. Let's see how that looks. That looks like enough. And the frequency, we'll change that up to like 4. That's kind of cool. So then what we'll do is we'll take the position and we'll start up here. From there, and we'll sort of move it. We'll sort of start it right there, and over 5 seconds, we'll move it down to there. So now you can see it kind of oscillates back and forth like a leaf would when it's falling. But the cool thing is, even though you've got keyframes on the position, you can also, on top of that, add position oscillator to it. So if you take the position Y magnitude and say set that to like 25, change that to 8, how about, and we'll change this to 35. There we go. So there you can see it kind of, I mean, that's not the best animation in the world, but it kind of dips down as it's going down, sort of dips down, slows down, dips down, slows down as it's going down and rotating. And then if you keyframe these values down to 0, it'll stop like popping up at the end. So you could just take the Y magnitude, keyframe that, move it ahead a little bit, set it to 0. And then you've got a cool little leaf falling or someone climbing down a ladder, or I don't know, some sort of thing that would take a long time with keyframes, but with this, just a little playing around with the settings can, you know, make a fairly complex animation rather quickly. Well, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys can use this to create some interesting animations and hopefully save yourself some time doing so. If you have any questions, you can email me at dustin@magicforhat.com, or if you use this to create something cool, I would be interested in seeing that too if you want to send it along. Alright, thanks for watching.